Mental Maps is brought to you by Aruka Well. Aruka Well is a virtual holistic mental health service providing psychiatric evaluations, holistic interventions, and when needed, medication management. For more information, check out Aruka Well at www.arukawell.co. That's www.arukahwell.co. Welcome back to Mental Maps. As always, I hope this finds you well no matter what season of life you're in. Today, I'm joined by someone who is trying to bridge in the world of lunar space, this entire rhythmic clock, if you will, and mental health. William Henderson. William, welcome.
Thank you, Josh. Pleasure to be here. Thank
Man,
you
I'm
for
glad you're
inviting
here,
me.
and I love the work you're doing. And so when I got a hold of your profile, I was like, man, my listeners will really get a lot out of this because you're talking about something that in the mental health world is discussed a lot. Sometimes maybe as a joke or as in passing, but there definitely seems to be a some validity in this, right? So can you tell us just a little bit of like what you're doing in this whole concept of lunar life and trying to track this stuff?
Yeah, well, basically, we feel we created a whole new category, and that category is personal timing intelligence. So, what does that mean? Basically, a lot of people put, you know, items on their calendar or to-do list, and when they think about it, they're thinking about the priority they have to do things in, and maybe there's some logistics in terms of you're trying to chunk things around a particular vicinity or, a plan or pattern around your family or friend or business or work. But people don't really give much attention to the timing that they should do things. And so, circadian rhythms are really well documented and researched, and there's a host of tons of research from NASA and the other entities worldwide that have basically looked at the effects of celestial movements on people, and also how phenomena like solar flares or coronal mass ejections can impact people as well. So we bring all of that to bear and basically give the users a insight as to the best time to actually do things as important as maybe finding the next place to eat dinner, right?
Yeah, that is wild, man. So let's kind of think of it first, before we jump into what lunar life does. I would love to talk a lot about what is this celestial movement concept that you just brought up, right? So what does that mean and why is that important to the everyday human?
Well, initially when I was looking at it, I was just looking in the context of humanity, like as a arc, um, going down the rabbit hole of large language models. I researched, humanity is basically 7 million years old. Us as a species. Let's put that out there. There could be other data that says differently, but it's a long time. However, when you look at man-made calendars, they've only been around for 6,000 years.
Hmm.
So my insight or curiosity was like, okay, what was going on during the other, almost 7 million years?
Yeah.
What was governing us? And the only thing I really came to understand was that it was really celestial movements. So like movements of the stars, the moon, the sun, and then different phenomena, and so eclipses and so forth. And then a lot of people would say, well, this kind of sounds like astrology, but it really isn't. Astrology is kind of like was kind of early humans' perception and trying to make sense and order of the universe. But we know a great deal more about the universe now today than we did then. And so I think that's why astrology is kind of looked down by a lot of people. But we're doing actually the hard math to figure out the celestial movements and how they impact our lives. And you have to consider this. Um, our major systems and us as humans have been governed by celestial movements for 7 million years. And when I ran into our chief scientist, she corrected me. She said, no, well, it's billions of years. Billions and billions of years have been under celestial movements that have created our major systems. And I just recently saw a picture of a human cell with many different technologies looking at it. And when you look at a human cell, it's a universe within a universe. So it's not hard for people to understand that uh, we are maybe impacted by uh, celestial movement more than we actually have even considered. And we finally have a computing paradigm with your phone and these large language models be able to test that out as a hypothesis and theory. Yeah.
Well, and when you think about it, we talk a lot about like ancestral healing and that entire concept on our show. And, you know, tracking stars and moon and knowing where that was at and knowing what was going on. That was wildly important for humans for many, many years, right? Not only within the movement, but where they're going, the time of year, very profound
hmm
things that have happened, all kind of went around that space. And so you're saying that within this technology that you have, you're able to find when is the mind and the body kind of optimizing with the flow of the universe. And so the question I would have in that would be, how is it that the universe impacts the body and the mind so much? Like, what is it that creates that effect?
Yeah, let's just look at the basic things. And this is where people go to, and of course we're LunarLife, so they're gonna look at the moon, right? So, when there's a new moon, we're mostly in a reflective phase, right? We're contemplative. We're thinking about kind of taking stock of, our moment and time, what's transpired over the last few weeks, months, maybe even years, and then looking ahead. When you're trying to do that in a full moon, you probably have a little hard focusing because you want to be out doing things, exploring at night. It's hard to sleep because luminosity is very bright. It's also hard to sleep because you just feel like a lot of energy, right? So that's a perfect example of like where, rhythm could actually impact how you do and when you do things, right?
Hmm.
Now, the whole thing is you have to think of how humans actually perceive time. We have, counts of seconds and minutes and hours. I can remember an exercise when I was a kid was judging like how long 5 minutes was, and it's very difficult to do for a human because time for us both collapses and expands. It collapses when we're having fun, so it goes by really fast, and then it expands when we're really like, we're not having fun, right? You're sitting there at your job, you're looking at the clock, watch pot never boils, that kind of thing. So uh, it's just maybe that people may not be actually having a mental crisis per se, or they may not be really snake bit. It just might be they're doing things at the wrong time, right? And they may know what that time is. We're not going to tell them anything different that they don't know. It's just that we're going to make them aware of what's already in their voice, right? And with our N of one perspective, we're a cohort of one. We understand that these things can affect people independent of one another and uniquely.
Hmm.
And that's that's the thing. So it's all about finding your own pattern, your own personal rhythm that works for you.
And so it sounds like too that, of course, there's a lot of concept about energy, right? And how the energy in this whole space really creates a lot. I know that doing a lot of work in residential stuff, there's always that discussion of, the full moon and what's going to happen on the full moon. Everybody gets fired up on the full moon and those kind of things. And so you're saying, yes, there's science to this. And that science really, could be just this energy that a full moon brings, whether that's that we're innately inclined to be a little bit more cranked in a full moon, or there's an energy component to it. That's kind of the reason why those times of the year, if you will, are very activating.
Yeah, I mean, there was a study where someone was actually put in a dark cave, and they could actually, um, they knew there was a full moon, like they felt the same kind of feeling. So
Oh,
it's not
wow.
even just even luminosity, it's gravity. We have systems in our bodies that are they are influenced by gravity and luminosity. And when
Mm.
you think about like, you know, if your cortisol is up, meaning that you're like really anxious, right? And you're not getting very much sleep and your melatonin's down, you make decisions with high cortisol levels or low melatonin levels. Either one of those, you're going to make not the greatest decision. If both of those are crashing, you're going to really make poor decisions. So if we can kind of figure out like just where you're most likely to have that, right? That we can steer you away from maybe making or having a better time to make that decision. And if we can change your outcome, your positive outcome, and move that needle a little bit more to positive, even by a few percentage points, and we can lessen the negative outcomes by a few percentage points, we feel that moves the needle enough for people where it's going to impact their lives in a very positive way.
Do you feel like this is something that has been known for, centuries and just within the modern age, we've kind of lost track of it? Or is this really kind of a new age experience of this understanding?
That's a great question. And I don't even know how to answer that. But I myself have felt like I've had pretty good timing, right?
Mm.
And this is kind of like my curiosity led me down to my own path of figuring out why on some days I do the same thing, it works really well, and some days it doesn't. And so, I kind of pattern my life around that. I sleep when I'm tired and I wake up when I'm not, and I think that's actually made a difference in my life, really. But not
And
everyone has the luxury to be able to do that. So,
yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, right? Is that, you know, I love history. And so I spend a lot of time like reading history stuff and explore things and all that kind of thing. And one of the things that I've noticed throughout the years of just reading stuff about that is that mankind has been very aware of the world and the natural environment and everything around it, especially in the movement of being outside. And the farther that we get away from that, the more artificial light that we have, the more that we're staying up really late at night watching TV rather than sleeping, the more that we can work way past dark,
yeah.
those kind of things. It does seem like not only like let's taking out the mental illness component of it and just really going in with just like a health perspective, it does seem to really impact your decision making, your cortisol levels, your melatonin production, all these kind of hot topic neurotransmitter things that we talk about in the mental health space. And so you're saying that you guys are able to kind of see some of this in your math that, yeah, there are good times to be making decisions and bad times, not from a horoscope or whatever, but literally from the energy that's being created in in the universe, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, it's wild, but there's lots of studies on circadian rhythms, and there's lots of studies on how different phenomena impact our bodies. NASA's done a amount of it. Commercial airlines do it because they're concerned about passengers and pilots because they don't have the benefit of having an atmosphere to like filter a lot of this stuff and no one's really been able to access all that research at once, right? And put it to good use. And that was just my inspiration right there to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, for, the everyday person, how many times do we maybe have a day, where we're just not feeling it, right? But it's like get another cup of coffee or do something else, right? Just kind of get on top of it and just push through and get through the day. But really, there does seem to be like this season. And so, if you're in that flow, if you are having that luxury of being like, hey, I need to turn it down today, or man, I wake up, I'm feeling it. Let's turn it up today. You're saying that you can kind of see that. So within this lunar life, tell us about what is this thing doing? Like, how does it work from the N of one perspective?
Well, We have basically two-part system. So one is we have astrocast. So astrocast basically goes out and looks at the phenomena that are happening, in a day, and it could be anywhere from 10 to 30 on any given day. And that gives you kind of like the state of the universe. Then you wake up and we have a little journal tool that's called Astro Pulse. Takes you about 2 minutes. Runs down about 15 to 18 different aspects of your feeling when you wake up, your intentionality for the day. We also track, things like technical glitches because people don't realize like some of these phenomena can impact your phone battery drains faster. You may have poor, reception. You may have glitches in your computer or RAM. You could have your community could have electrical grid failures or brownouts. And then also your pets at home can be impacted by this. People wonder why their dog's running around bouncing off the walls or your cat, and this could be just one of those things. So we allow people to comment on that, and also to subject or subtract maybe other things that may be going on, like you had a heavy travel schedule or heavy work schedule or inclement weather, or you're just going through some other kind of mood that could, mimic a bad day, right? But and not be necessarily due to some of the factors. So that gives you a time series print of what you're thinking and feeling for that moment. And we can go back historically if you've got enough of those time series prints to be able to say, well, let me go against this. How do I sleep against a full moon? How do I sleep with a new moon? What's my sleep cycle? What I have a big presentation I need to do on this time. What is the best rhythm for me to kind of get into to make sure I'm prepared for that? So those are some of the ways that you can use N of one testing to actually suss that out, to figure out the pattern that works for you and the rhythm that works for you as well.
Interesting. So it sounds like with this tracking, not only universal tracking, but also like personal tracking, together you begin to create like this timeline, kind of knowing when you're operating the best, when you're not. Like I know that a lot of females will do this around their menstrual cycle and that kind of stuff, but you're saying that this is more driven by the universe and those kind of things. So, what are maybe outside of the moon? What are some of the events, if you will, you've seen universally that seems to really impact the human body and the human brain?
Yeah, but I mean, just even most of the world's population lives by the water, by the ocean. And so when you consider like tidal influences, that's another consideration of a phenomena that happens, right? So I mean, you going somewhere and it's high tide, that might be actually good for you, right? Or, it just depends on how you react to it. You know,
Hmm.
some people could be have more affinity to high tides. Some people could have more affinity to low tides, right? Um, you can understand there's the guy or the person who's always unhappy, and then when everyone's unhappy, he's happy. That could be phenomena happening, right?
Yeah.
He's just wired different. Yeah. We're all wired differently. So, and that's what we're trying to understand. We don't have all the answers. What we're asking for people to do is to help us figure this out. Come on and go to lunarlife.me and check out our beta, sign up for it, and help us, discover this together.
Yeah, so it sounds like, since this thing's, not on the ground, but it's getting going. Every bit of data is really important because the more data you find, the more you kind of see maybe these generalizations you can make of, the average person really struggles in this phase of the moon. Or you talked about those other events, and I was kind of mentioning that. So would you consider them like solar flares, meteor showers? Like, are those like what other things can really impact you?
Yeah, I mean, geomagnetic storms, they happen every month. They last a few days. We have kind of a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being pretty gnarly, and 8, these fall on 8. It creates anxiety, anxiousness, and mental, you know, uh, in your mental framework. It'll cause disorientation in wild animals. So you may find that you go down the road and you just see, oh, wow, there's an awful lot of roadkill. Well, that could be, basically
Mm.
not really due to like a spring kind of thing or a herding kind. It could be actually a phenomena that took place, a severe geomagnetic storm, which actually impacted, wild animals. And it also can impact electrical grids. The fact that this happens monthly and three, 2 to 3 days in reality, that's that's striking. I don't know that people really are
Mm.
aware of that. So
Yeah,
our
I mean,
tool, our Lunar Life makes people aware of those things, and you can understand. You can put it into context. You're not crazy, right? There's maybe an explanation as to why your technology your whole day is not working. Your dogs are going crazy, your technology is going crazy, you're feeling anxious, you're feeling worried for no reason, everything in your life, but you just woke up that morning and nothing was working right. And you just think, oh my God, I'm falling apart. But it just might be, okay, it's just a storm and you just need to weather the storm.
I know so many people who are listening to this are like, yeah, validity. I feel so validated by what you're saying because they always are like the full moon and that kind of stuff. So it makes me laugh when or makes me smile when I think about that. One of the things I think is interesting too is how like, we as humans seem to have lost kind of that understanding. And it's so wild to me that there is so much going on like outside of us that we just don't pick up on, right? Like, I had somebody on the show not too long ago talking about plants and just how plants are always moving and evolving and different things that they're doing throughout the seasons. And it's like there are so many
Mhm.
layers that are seasonal that it's almost as if like we're one of the very few beings that exist on the earth that try to not act as if we're seasonal. And I think that's such an interesting concept. What's your thoughts on that?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth to that. I mean, we're tremendously adaptable, right? We
Hmm.
can adapt to almost any, uh, you know, environmental thing and in really often surprising ways. you know,
Yeah.
just our ingenuity and will to live can, come up with some striking scenarios and outcomes. So yeah, I believe that very much so.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the reasons that we haven't ever really reaped a lot of negative benefits from it, just because we are so adaptable. But it does seem like, and especially in the mental illness space, that the farther we remove ourselves from it, it does seem like there's this uptick in it. And so you wonder, it sounds like this is something that could kind of give you a
Yeah.
connection.
Well, there's also, you have to consider some events happen like on really big time scales, like 3,500 years.
Yeah.
Every 3,500 years or every 2,000 years, there could be something. And, you know, these could actually, have an impact on whole civilizations, right? People
Mhm.
don't really look at that piece.
Mm.
And so everyone kind of looks at, maybe this happened or this occurred, but it could be just something that is natural, right? And I
Mhm.
don't know that really people are digging into that. We're interested in it. We found some interesting things already that you know we're paying attention to.
Do you care to share that, or is that kind of classified?
Well, sharing it kind of makes us look a little crazy, right? Yeah, until
Hey,
we
that's what
have
we do on the
really
show.
more data behind it. Yeah. Well, it was an interesting pattern that we sussed out that happened just recently, and that pattern, the last time that pattern happened was 1150 BC, and that was curious. I was around the time of um, the Bronze Civilization, kind of cratering. Yeah,
Mm.
so it was we were kind of surprised by it. And what it was is basically a specific lunar pattern and solar pattern that when we ran it back, you know, because that's the one thing about doing the math with, we can run back, what the universe looked like at a specific time and place. And we were just surprised that, okay, it doesn't happen for, it happens every 3,500 years, but then the frequency happens much quicker, like every 2, 3, 4, 500 years. So the thing is, we can comment on it, but there's no one going to be alive really to see it happen again, right? And we don't know actually what it portends. So me to talk about it, yeah, I mean, it's curious to us. There's no way we would be validated talking about it, though.
Yeah, you just gotta
Yeah.
like the nerd out part of it, but it is interesting, that you can pick up on these things, and I like that. So I think if especially the listeners of this
Well,
show, they may be thinking to themselves like, what does this have to do with health? Right? So there's a whole concept of like performance optimization and make a good decision, but how can this bridge into the world of like mental health, physical health? Like, what does that look like outside of maybe just that anxiety component you've already talked about?
like using a tool like Celestial Search, figuring out the best times for you to work out. Maybe it's not every day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mm.
right? Maybe you need to change it around as, so you keep your energy up, right? And you're always put in that zone. If you're a performance athlete, maybe this is something that you want to consider, right? Not only just your training schedule, but your game days. What are you likely to, be on that day, right? What's going to be your aptitude, and what do you have to mentally prepare for? So, to us, this is a productivity tool. It's kind of a tool that can give you some edge. It's a I love to use it when I'm going from city to city. I'm in a different city all the time, and if you do a Google search on a restaurant, you get like 50, results, right? And you have to wade through them. But I love using our celestial search tool. I just put in, where's the best place for me to eat dinner tonight? If I feel like I'm in the mood for a specific food like steak, or surf and turf or something like that, or noodles, I could put that in, and it's going to give me a rifle shot. Just one place to go, a time, rationale for why, and
Mm.
you know that it works.
What's maybe an example of one of the rationales? So like you're in your new spot. Let's say you're in Chicago, New York, Nashville, whatever. Like you're in a spot, you type in like I'm looking for, surf and turf, rifle shot into this spot. What would be the rationale for Will to go eat at this one spot?
Yeah, so one of the things is kind of built around your archetype. So there's a test that you take when you first sign up, and we basically, you take the test, and we come up with an archetype for your personality and occupation, and those together are meaningful. So when you actually do a search, we're going to, you know, uh, basically show you something that really shows affinity with our understanding of who you are, right?
Mhm.
So that's square one. Square two is also looking at kind of your, where you are in the universe based, because we're born in some place, that we're born in a place in the universe, and it's a question of like how far afield are we from there, right? So that has something to do with it. And then also the pattern, like uh is it a full moon? Is it maybe a full moon, you might want to go to a place a little bit more energy, right? Reflective. New moon, you might want to go to some place a little more contemplative, a little serene. um so there's a lot of attributes that go into it, and the more you use it, the better it gets. The feedback you input into it, when it misses, helps get it dialed in so that it misses less, and your outcomes get better.
Yeah, so it's almost like there's this layer system of like personality as well as like your connection with the universe, like who you are. And then you add that on top of like what the universe is doing. And so together it kind of helps make some decisions for yourself and kind of what that space looks like. Have you guys thought about, what this looks like maybe from a mental health treatment perspective? One of the things that I think of as I hear you talk about this is we know certain disorders, specifically like bipolar disorder, is very connected to circadian rhythms. Like we see it, as soon as something gets out of whack, like the suprachiasmatic nucleus is very closely related to some of these other parts of the brain that get really cranked in bipolar disorder. And so, have you guys been looking into that, or is that something you're thinking about doing? Maybe can I track these ups and downs so that you're a little bit more aware of what you need, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we can really, we're not uh well versed enough to be able to comment on that.
Mm,
If someone has a, significant disorder, that's, I think that's, nothing really celestial can fix that. But I will say, there's some people that think that they have mental illness, right? That just maybe you're just in a bad rhythm. They're just doing things at the rat, and that just may not be something that they may be able to control. It may not be able to because you have to think of the calendar is actually working against our intuition sometimes. You
mhm,
can understand, you put things in your calendar, you wake up in the day and in the morning, you look at it and you're like, I am definitely not doing that. I do not feel it. It's not the right thing. I'm calling and canceling that thing, or I'm just not doing that activity because I just don't feel it. But if you constantly have that feeling that you still have to go and do it, that's your job or it's something else, understanding that would put you in a better position to say, okay, I'm just in the wrong pattern. I'm in the wrong rhythm. And maybe finding a new job that has a different pattern or works with my pattern will make me happier, right? That
mm.
could be one of the things that you come to a conclusion. So I think it can help in that regard where you think you're crazy, but you're not. You're just stuck in a bad pattern.
Well, we're all a little crazy, but in the whole component of, being able to know, like, where you're at and what you're doing, I do think, for me as a provider, I think about how people could really get benefit from just knowing what the rhythm is, and what that dissonance could be in the universe, right? Like I've seen people who they'll take a job working third shift, and then the next thing you know, they're like wildly depressed. And it's just because they're just not made to stay up all night and work and sleep all day. There's not. And no matter how much caffeine they take, no matter how much melatonin they take, where other people, for whatever reason, seem to just kill it, right? They are night owls, they're like living it up. And so I do think that there is something about, if you're someone out there and you're like, this seems kind of interesting to me in the mental health space, maybe track your stuff and just kind of know and see there's so much that we do in mental health where we're tracking, right? Tracking thoughts, tracking mood, doing that. Why not track what that looks like inside of this whole thing that we're living in? Man, I could see where that would be really helpful to people.
Yeah, I mean, it's really important just to stress, this is not a, excuse for poor judgment or poor behavior or, for, seeking out professional help if you're struggling with something.
Mhm.
Um, but to some degree, if you can do this and put some effort into, to paying attention to it, and that makes a difference, and we feel that it can, that's great. It's a win.
Yeah. Yeah. And being able just to, just becoming the expert in yourself, and I can see where many clinicians could try to leverage something like this to just try to understand what's going on in the brain better? Just like, why are these flare ups happening and different things? Like in my mind, that's something that I spend a lot of time doing of like, is it stress? Like, what is it? And then sometimes, those old adages, if there's just something happening in the universe and that's why all of our people are really anxious right now, there could be some validity to that.
Yeah, like we love our the feedback we get on the archetypes. People think they're so accurate. Um, and when you think about like, this is like a way how people build relationships and their kind of work ethic. You know, you could be like a garbage man and be a ruler leader. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And you could see that it's that mentality. You could be a head of a company and be a creator warrior, right? It's just, or you could be a jester warrior. It's really interesting how people can do lots of different things, but in different ways, and then
Mm.
fit together. When you look at team building, um, building like an organization, building a sports team, you know, these are things that could be hugely beneficial, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, knowing kind of how people tick and what they desire to do, and then like that old adage of like what fires you up and where your God given ability kind of intersect is kind of where your purpose lies. And any good company can like take that together. Anybody can find that. And so, yeah, I think the archetype concept that would be really helpful to people.
Yeah, put yourself in the best position to succeed, you know,
Yeah,
by personal timing intelligence.
yeah.
People don't really spend enough time figuring out where the time they should do things. It's not really something that anyone pays attention to.
Yeah. I mean, I think about that a lot. Like my wife and I, we get up really early and go to the gym and train or just different things. And like I know just like a 30-minute move that I made in my sleep time a couple months ago was just huge for me. Like I felt so much better. But for her, she was like, "Nope, I don't like this. Like I'm more, I mean, like you're talking from 4:30 to 5 a.m. Like that's not a huge difference, but in our world, for whatever reason, it was. And then two, like you're talking about, I know there's a huge movement right now in a lot of like wellness spaces of trying to get up around the same time every day. Don't be, sleeping in forever unless you really feel like you need it because we all live on these rhythms. And so it does seem like, universally there's that rhythm too. Maybe the universe is in a space where like, yeah, you do need to shut it down for like a day, but also, can you be in this rhythm of like knowing where you're at specifically? Hmm.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to look at their lives and say, well, these are random things, random outcomes. But in actuality, it may not be so random.
Hmm.
And so it, you know, there's time exploring. And in fact, one of our, one of the people working on the team, she came, we had a meeting. She's like, well, I felt like I woke up this morning. I needed to go for a 45-minute walk. And so I asked what activity I should be doing, and it said, you need to do a 45-minute walk. So it's like, we're not really doing anything that you're not doing yourself. Well,
Hmm.
the only thing we're really doing is we're calling attention to it a little bit more, um, so that you probably listen to yourself, your inner self a little bit more, tell you
Hmm.
what your body is feeling. So we're not like fortune telling anything like that. We're just kind of like saying, based on science and these attributes and these things going on in the universe today, um, this is probably the best time and place for you to do this activity or not do this.
That's cool, man. So how can people follow this stuff? Like, it sounds like you got the company going, you can do the beta test. Like, how can people get involved in this if they want to jump on board?
Yeah, so you can go to www.lunarlife.me and they can basically sign up for our beta version and they'll get access to AstroPulse and Celestial Search. We're still refining astrocast, but that should be shortly available as well, and also N1 testing. But they can do compatibility tests, with somebody that they know, friend or love interest. You can look up historical figures. So if you want to look at some historical figures in the past and see kind of what their stars were, what was Tiger Woods' stars when he won the Masters in 2019, what did that look like? It's interesting. It's kind of,
Yeah.
fun to kind of think of like, all right, well, maybe that guy was like hitting it all cylinders that day, Yeah.
Yeah, and I think there's
So
some
it's a
validity in
fun
that.
thing. Yeah, I don't know that anyone really looks at performance that way, but it certainly is something to consider. Yeah, for sure.
Oh,
And we
absolutely.
we did some analysis on Eisenhower, President Eisenhower, and George Washington. And we were surprised that cycles actually showed some affinity with the arc of their careers, which was and that we kind of felt like if this was something, we should be able to go look in a historical figure, and we chose two that we happen to know were well documented and we had a lot of insight on, and it was kind of interesting that we came up with the results that we did. So that kind of gave us a little bit more comfort and validation that there was something more to this. And then when we dug in on the phenomena and started finding the body of research that supported it, our hunch, then that kind of gave us a little bit more validation. So we've been validating this, ourselves, and in the midst of building the product and making it available to people. And, we're starting to see people validate, some of the things, through their experience. And that's kind of great. We love seeing that happen. We're like everybody else. We're waiting on the edge of our seats to see, how this shakes out. But we invite people to come and help us do that.
That's awesome.
And that's www.lunarlife.me. You can sign up for a beta testing just on the iPhone just now. But we hope to have that also available for Android uh, in a very short time soon.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll throw a link in the show notes as well, whether you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on podcasts. We'll throw that in there. And man, William, thank you so much. This is such a cool conversation, and I love the work you're doing, man. I think this is really cool. And who knows what it looks like, but I think you're taking a lot of brand new, really cool math and that kind of stuff, and then bringing it into things that we've known's been there forever, giving it validity, and just finding a way to track these things. And I think that's really cool, man. So thanks for sharing all this. It's been really great.
Yeah, I'd love to get your insights just on your work and how where when you read this and you came across this, in the context of what we discussed right now, what are the questions for you? Like, how do you think this, intersects with what you do?
Man, kind of like what I was talking about, right? Like, what healing occurs in my opinion throughout like all of these like concepts. And so the environment is part of healing, right? And so we know that not only from just like your tribe and the community you're in and the water you're drinking, and we spend so much time focused on that, but there's clearly something in the universe as well, right? And so not to say like don't go get therapy until you're in this sooner or whatever, that's not helpful, but there is something to be
Yeah, yeah.
said for the reason you may feel unwell could be about this concept, right? And so I think that just becoming more aware of where you exist in this universe, man, that's such a powerful thing to have. And so when I like looked up on this, I was like, this is really interesting. I'm like an ancestral hippie guy, right? So that like already gets me going and thinking like, oh yeah, this is really cool. But then also from the concept of, well, how can it help explain the whole concept of this show, right? Why does the brain become unwell? And so could it be for some people that
Yeah,
there's other things going on at the same time stress hits and life's happening and all these other things, and they're just maybe more vulnerable. And so I would love to, as you guys get this data, it'd be really cool to see like, are there times that the brain's more vulnerable? Are there times that the brain's not vulnerable? And it's a little bit more resilient. It can take some of it, right? And like for a human being, how do you know that maybe
sure.
you're a little bit more raw and maybe you're a little bit more protected from the world, and so you can kind of put yourself out there, vice versa. Those are things that I think about when I think of this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think about people maybe having, just a tough life and they just may be trapped in the wrong calendar, right? So,
Mm.
or trapped by their calendar.
Mm. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you can maybe, if you have a way to understand that, a little bit. You don't necessarily have to change your job or whatever. But you can do things to offset kind of the things that are happening to you, and it gives you peace of mind, right? To
Yeah.
know that, all right, I'm not crazy. I am actually not a morning person, and I just need to take steps to make sure I mitigate that, and for my own benefit.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's where, stuff like this is really cool because it creates an opportunity to just understand ourselves better. And I think that, one could say that, well, we've been living a long time and not had this, so we should be okay. But then I also think that we're in this new age of, where mental illness is just rampant and we have this wild, stressful, restless like life that's around us. And so we're not going backwards, right? Like we can't get rid of the phone. We're not going to get rid of the internet. Like we've got to learn to live in these things. And so is it that leveraging a lot of this stuff could help us as humans to learn how to like navigate these spaces and to be healthy doing it?
Well, it's funny. Yeah, it's funny you say that because one of the things that really jumped out at me, like I'm a numbers person. I'm always fascinated by numbers. And the one number that always fascinated me was like there's a billion people in the 1800s. You could say 1800, 1850, but there were a billion people. And so you look at today and there's like, all right, we're pushing 8.5 billion people. And that, well, it was a couple hundred years ago. But when you look in the context of like how old humanity is, and you go back and, with large language models, there's good research out there. I don't know how accurate it is, but it's the best research we have to this point, and it suggests that humans have been around for 7 million years as a species, right? Uh, so then the question becomes, all right, so how many people were here 6,000 years ago? And the worldwide population came back was 170 million. Well, that struck me. I'm like, wow, it took 7 million years to get to 170 million people, but it only took, 4,000 years to get to a billion. And it's only taken us a couple of hundred years to go to 8 billion, 8.5 billion. So I'm like, what is the wild card here? It can't be penicillin. I mean, a lot of those things happen in the modern age, right? Diet and all of that, but it doesn't explain everything. But the conclusion I came to, it was basically the calendar. The advent of the solar and lunar calendar meant that farming, agriculture could happen on a mass scale and by fewer resources. And that enabled humanity to basically congregate in cities so they can get bread, they can raise livestock,
Right.
domestic animals for food. That freed us up from having everybody to hunt and for their own sustenance. And now, because we were free to think more, and we've, formed an alphabet, uh, all of these things, and that accelerated humanity so quickly. So perhaps maybe the mental aspect of it is that we just haven't evolved quick enough to the pace of change. And that's kind of my insight to, all right, so if that were maybe part of the issue, what if we were to kind of go back to the way we were, but that's complete anarchy, right? That just doesn't work. The world would stop if we went back to lunar cycles. We wouldn't be able to produce food. It would just not work. So the other alternative is like, okay, let's find your pattern within that context, and maybe that's a difference maker. So I don't think you're that wrong. I think we are both seeing the same thing, coming to the same conclusion, but we have, I'm thinking we may have part of the answer.
That's incredible. That's such an interesting thing to contemplate. When you just think of humanity and what we've done socially, and especially in the last 200 years, right? Or even the last 150 years, it's just been like, shoo, like we've went on. But then you think about what was going on before, and you can look at history and all the things that societies have done. But I think there was, in the functional health wellness space, which is a place that I operate in, probably about 5 years ago, I would say there was this huge movement of like, we got to go back. We've got to get rid of all these things. And to a point, right? I'm not a huge fan of a phone. I don't like to carry one. Like there's all these kind of components in that. But we can't go backwards, right? Like they're just, the whole thing that you can't do that. But you also can't say, well, this is just the way it is. I'm going to be stressed out till I die. So we've got to find this kind of like balance. And so being able to leverage some of these ancestral ways of knowing where the heck we are in the world, man, is huge. And I truly do believe that. And I think that being able to like, navigate this new world rather than just being like, no technology for anyone, we've just got to find a way to like live inside of it.
Yeah, yeah, without a doubt. And I don't know. We're gonna find out together. So I hope there's a future opportunity to come back on the show and share our new developments and
Yeah.
maybe we can come to some maybe
Yeah. I'd
we
love
can
to
come
see
to
some cool
some
data on
probably
here. Maybe
real
get a
answers
couple
to your
years in
audience.
this.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, so that's where we are, and really appreciate you for having us on the show, having me, and yeah, we'll look forward to being on your show in the future again.
Yeah,
If
awesome. Will, thank you
possible.
for being here, man. And I think the listeners got a lot out of this. Guys, if you're, just check it out, click on the link below. And man, whether you get involved in this or not, contemplate like where are you at in the universe? And how is that impacting how you're feeling today? You may learn something cool. Till next time.